answering the first question. You've already heard me say this a lot. Like most things, interviews are about momentum. Once you have prepared, created space for yourself to be in the right mental state, manage your nerves, and enter the room with confidence, the interview begins. Your answer to the first question helps you build positive momentum. Remember that people develop first impressions very quickly. I think it's fair to say that many have begun to make critical decisions about you by the time you finish answering your first question. To provide some perspective, I want to remind you of what I shared in the overview of the job selection process and add a little bit about the typical interview. Please remember that interviews can and will operate outside of what is typical. Interviews are typically about 30 minutes in length. They can be as long as an hour. And candidates are usually asked about 10 questions, with up to 20 on the rare occasion that an interview is an hour long. Sometimes you'll be given the questions just before the interview or as you sit down. If you are given the questions and know the schedule, you're able to figure out about how much time you have for each question. I suggest using a 3-minute rule when planning to answer your questions. There will be questions that take longer and some that are shorter. It's wise to plan for an average of 3 minutes per question. While there is no guarantee, the first question is very often something like, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're the right person for this position. The wording will, likely, be different, but the intent is the same. They want to learn a little bit about you and why you think their job is right for you. This is your opportunity to build positive momentum and to begin painting a picture of yourself in that position. Do yourself a favor and be ready to answer this question clearly and concisely. When you practice answering this question, be sure to take 3 to 5 minutes. When preparing, please remember that the panel has read your complete application packet, including your resume, your letter of introduction, and your letters of recommendation. Using your 3 to 5 minutes to simply recap your experience represents a missed opportunity to tell your story and to build positive momentum. Your story is about more than your job experience. Take this opportunity to begin painting a picture of yourself as the next person for your dream job. Telling the committee a little bit about yourself and why you're the right person for this position in 3 to 5 minutes is not easy. I lean on the concept of a very simplified 5-paragraph theme when answering this question. I highlight 3 things that make me stand out relative to this particular position. I usually start with a very short synopsis of my experience. Next, I very briefly cover my education, which I see as an asset that's important, but far from the most important thing. I finish by spending the bulk of my time on my leadership style. I ensure that in addressing my leadership style, I connect those things I value with the things highlighted in the job posting. In conclusion, I reiterate the 3 things that make me stand out. In doing so, I wrap up my answer. I pick 3 things because even in times of stress, humans can typically remember 3 things. You can find a written version of an answer I might give accompanying this lesson in the supplementary materials. Remember that this is just question 1, and you have many more questions to share your stories and your experiences that you want to share. Trying to share all of this in your answer to question 1 risks putting the panel to sleep, and worse, showing them that you do not have the self-discipline to know when to talk and when to move on. And sadly, in my experience, this is a skill that many leaders struggle with. Thinking about how to practice for this question presents some challenges. Most importantly, you don't know if you'll be asked the question or exactly how it'll be presented. While most districts start with a question like this, not all do. So being flexible in your response is key. Instead of having a script in my head, I choose to have an outline that I can modify for the slightly different ways this question can be asked. I follow this outline, giving myself the space to freestyle a little bit within a structure and as the question demands it. It works for me, and it has worked for many people that I've coached. So now you have a structure. You will think about what works for you as far as an approach to being prepared to answer this question. And now it's time for you to start practicing. In my experience, practicing for an interview has kind of a bad rap. Obviously, I don't agree with the mindset that people are either good or bad at interviewing. Tell me something that most anyone has gotten good at. How did they get good at it? Well, they got help and they practiced. At just about anything, we are better when we practice. I've answered this question dozens of times in actual interviews and hundreds of times more in my head and with trusted colleagues. Yeah, those trusted colleagues again. Sometimes the answer rolls off my tongue, sometimes it does not. I want my rough times to happen in practice. Practicing this question to the point where you can consistently answer it well will give you the confidence to know that you will wrap up your answer and move into question 2 with positive momentum. Each person needs to find the right time and place to practice. I find that my practice is best when I'm free from distraction. I go over the questions again and again. I reflect on what went well in each answer, where I went on for too long, and bits of information that I left out. I practice out loud when alone and in a space where I'm unlikely to be overheard. Once ready, I practice out loud with a trusted colleague. As hard as this is to do, there is simply no substitute. Once finished with an answer, I ask them for critical feedback and incorporate that feedback into my answer. But what if you don't get asked that question to start the interview? Every once in a while, the interview panel throws you a curveball. This is surprising when it happens. The first time it happened to me, it led to negative momentum. Upon reflection, I realized that they did me the greatest favor. They gave me an opportunity. How was that the greatest favor, and what was the opportunity? Well, at the end of the interview, you're often asked if you have anything to add. If you didn't get asked to tell the committee a little bit about yourself and why you're the right person for the position, you can give them that answer at the end. A good response when they ask if you have anything that you would like to add is, "Thank you so much for this opportunity. I just want to share a few things that make me the right person for this job." And then you can go into an appropriate version of your answer. Practice, 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 and you will be ready to answer this critical question, get your interview off to a great start, and build some positive momentum.